Welcome back to Around the Clock. Our next guest is Michael Gurnick. Michael, welcome to Around the Clock.
Thanks very much, Londa. I hope to speak a lot about the MRC here, and I'm glad you could have me on.
So, Michael, you're with the MRC, or Medical Reserve Corp, for those who don't know that, the MRC acronym. Can you first start by telling us what is the Medical Reserve Corp?
Well, Medical Reserve Corps is a group of volunteers which is housed at a federal level, so it's actually a program that started federally with the Office of the Surgeon General. And the reason it even came into existence was post 9/11, there was a lot of influences that came from that event, which actually started a lot of volunteer efforts in different ways. And one of the things that was looked at down the road is how unprepared we were at the local level for what could be a significant medical or healthcare event or impact. So it was started then to vet volunteers, identify those people who were actually credentialed to help out in emergencies at the local level.
Okay, so how does that work here in Ashland? First of all, do you have to be in the medical profession, and how do they get involved?
Not at all. The Medical Reserve Corps mission is medical at the end of the day. However, in Ashland here, for every medical person we have, a licensed professional in some field, be they an RN, physician, EMT, paramedic, there's probably 3 other people who we need as support people in administrative roles and registering people, that sort of thing, directing traffic. So it's an all-encompassing organization, but again, at the end of the day, it's a medical mission. Ashland is actually not a standalone unit per se. It's actually one of 33 towns in a region that's called Region 4A. And in Massachusetts, we don't have county health care as far as government goes. It's the only really county system we have for government is really the corrections field. So the medical field has to be arranged a little bit differently. So it's a regional coalition. And Region 4A is pretty much from Wilmington to Walpole, and kind of the geographic crescent that fits between 128 and 495. So you've got a visual about where that is. Okay. The coalition itself consists of public health agents, and each town has an executive committee, and somebody in a chair role or lead role like myself for the Medical Reserve Corps in each of those communities.
Okay, and if someone were interested and wanted to get involved, because I know you're always looking for new members.
Absolutely. The place to really start is take a look at the websites, the federal website, which is medicalreservecorps.org, or contact Mark Orm in the Public Health Office, right, because we are housed technically within public health, so we are in some ways affiliated with the Board of Health, even though it's kind of a parallel universe for what they're responsible for and what this is actually responsible for.
So how did you get involved with the Medical Reserve Corps?
Well, we moved to here, Ashland, in 2004. And that was about the time that the region itself, 4A, was starting to get organized. And the regional leadership at the time, regional coordinator, was holding meetings in each of the communities. And just out of interest, I decided that, geez, I'll maybe attend and see what this is about. And I have a pretty extensive background from the fire service across a number of years, and it was very easy for me to translate a lot of the command structure, operational components, logistical components of that, which I do every day, into facilitating this. And as a national program, you see that replicated at each level, so that even though we exist as a region, there's a statewide coordinator and then federal coordinator across the New England region, and then finally nationally itself. So it's consistent in that respect. There's also a certain amount of, let's say, decentralization to it, because different units are organized in different ways. Some are within public health arenas, such as we are. In Utah, some units are organized in the Sheriff's Department, because they're responsible for things like search and rescue and shelter operations and things like that. In Stockton, California, the MRC is housed in the fire department because they run the EMS service. So decentralization is good, and it's kind of the organization's strength in a way, because that really magnifies the types of things that MRC unit's going to be responsible for doing at the local level.
So they really make it fit to the community that they're in.
Exactly. One of my people at one of the national committees I sit on, she's from Washington State. And one of the things they had to deal with out there, if you remember some time ago, I think it was probably a year ago, is there was a landslide that literally took out an entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so their MRC people were involved a lot with that work.
With the search and rescue?
Not the search and rescue per se, but in that case, Other people had to be sheltered away from the scene. And unfortunately, they dealt with a lot of bereavement issues too, given the circumstances. We've had people from Ashland MRC help out with people who were relocated to Otis Air Base during Katrina from the Gulf Coast. In fact, I think Town Manager
Schiavi was probably involved with that while he was at the Cape.
Sure.
Yep.
We've had some volunteers who went out to Berkshire and Hampden counties during ice storms to help out there. I had one member who went down to the Gulf Coast during some of the hurricanes to work there. When deployment happens away from a single town, though, you're usually working with other organizations like the Red Cross or other disaster medicine groups on a federal level. So that's always an option for volunteer. But most people want to do something here in town.
Locally.
Yeah.
So speaking locally, coming up, you're going to be sponsoring a CPR class, but also then it's going to be an informational meeting, so if people want to learn about it. And when is that happening?
We're going to have that happen at either Town Hall or Library on October 28th.
Okay.
It'll start at 6 p.m. And the thinking is twofold here: to bring people in to become familiar with the Medical Reserve Corps for a first time, if that's something they want to continue to get involved with, and then also have the opportunity of CPR and basic first aid training as part of the beginning of volunteer work.
Right. There was a call about a year ago. We had an incident where a young gentleman, because he knew CPR, was able to help someone before the police came there, and it was called, we need more CPR training. So this fits right in.
It's proven across the country. In fact, Seattle's always a case study where citizen CPR is taught routinely, at even a high school level. And because of that, they have one of the highest cardiac survival rates in the country.
Interesting.
So those numbers follow, the training.
Oh, so maybe we should talk to our high school, and during senior week they try to do events, and maybe we can get some CPR training for our senior,
no reason
for our
not to.
graduates. Yeah. Okay. So October 28th. And where might they find information? Would that also be at the same website?
I will be getting information out through Mark Oram in Public Health.
Okay.
The decision right now is between the Town Hall and Library, because it'll depend upon a number of people.
Okay.
The minimum number is 10, and we'll see how high we can go from there.
Okay.
What we want to try and do too is, if somebody wants the CPR training but maybe doesn't want to get involved with the volunteer work right away, if there's enough slots, we'll open it up.
Okay, good. Now, before I let you go, so as you're a first-time guest on Around the Clock.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming. But before I can let you go, I have a question I ask all my first-time guests. It's not too hard.
Okay.
So the question is there something about you, Michael, that people may not know that you'd be willing to share with our viewers?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I can't sing or ballet dance.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Then we won't ask you to participate in a variety show.
All right, very good.
Well, Michael, thank you for coming on Around the Clock, for telling us about the Medical Reserve Corps. If you're interested, make sure you check out medicalreservecorps.org. And if you want to get your CPR training and get involved, look for the information coming up on October 28th.
Great.
Thanks again.
My pleasure.
And we'll be back with more Around the Clock.